That being said, a lot more to get into. We're halfway through. Thank you for staying with us, YouTube viewership and DSP listenership. We still have the Last Dance episodes 3 and 4 to get into, but we're gonna take a break from basketball right now and go right into the NFL. And yes, Trey, we can see the chat. And I think that we have the draft, and then we have some other stuff. So I'm just gonna say NFL, and I'll let whomever take it away.
I'll go last.
All right. Are we jumping into this New England kicker with the liberty or death tattoos? Or
go ahead.
What are we doing?
Go ahead.
So he's getting his tattoo removed. He's got a flag on one forearm, American flag. He's got liberty or death on the other forearm. And now he's come to the organization and says he's going to get it removed because he doesn't want any, slack as far as the team is concerned and his teammates. And I'm thinking to myself, how did he survive through college with those? If he had any brothers on the team, how did he get through 4 years of school with that? I don't know. I will never understand. And I'm sitting there like, well, why is he gonna remove him now?
Yeah,
if that's what he feels.
Play with the same long sleeve shirts on he had on before.
I don't get it.
Did he say why he was removing it?
He just said he didn't want to be a distraction. But no one had brought it up until he came out and said he didn't want to be a distraction. So obviously he's had these tattoos for a while, and they're very large. I mean, they're not small by no means. Very visible, and he's not a little guy. He's got pretty nice sized forearms, so they're very visible. But that's what's going on.
But now that people know that they were there, they know those are your thoughts and stuff anyway.
Yeah.
You're done?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
You there?
On that, yeah.
Trey, you got something to say?
No, I was just saying that now he's made it a point, about the tats and all of that. Now people know that didn't know exactly what he had and know exactly. So if you've had him, you got him for a reason. You know what I mean? It's not like he lost a bet and had to get it, and he carried him around with him. So he might as well just have left him.
And I think he had like a 3% sign or something on
3%.
As one of the tattoos or something like that.
Definitely had that.
And it kind of, for me, goes back to what was going on in Philly. Because it's always been the case where when something like that happens, the players of color will always give that a pass. And I've always wondered, how do you give that a pass when that's your teammate? And it's somebody you're supposed to be aligning yourself with.
So who was the first guy that they went to about that?
As for, with this guy here, or
Riley Cooper. With Riley Cooper. Who was the first guy that they went to?
Vic.
Okay. So Vic was coming off of what?
His case.
Coming off his case. Vic had to be
that
ambassador.
I would have rather he just not even got involved.
He had to, man. He had to be the ambassador there. Unfortunately, I've talked to Mike about this, and it was. I told him I expressed my disappointment, but Mike Vick at the time was going around the Philly schools talking about telling kids what they shouldn't do, and I appreciate that about Mike, but what I will say here is this. I don't give a damn about this kicker. I'm not going to give him the respect that he's and the attention that he's getting right now. Because as someone who's played baseball across the country from here to California, I know that I played with racist players.
Yeah.
I know that I played with them. The only reason why they wanted me because I can hit bombs and had an arm. That's the only reason why I was on the team. And like I told you before, cross, and this is softball as well, high-level softball, when you look across the field and you see one black player and he's hitting fourth, you know he's on the team because of his talent. Or he wouldn't be there. That's it. I'm not gonna get this guy to act like this. I'm really getting frustrated and almost bitter with we as black people. When we see a racist society be racist. Like, we've had one black president after millions of people who have lived on the soil. This country is racist.
Right.
It's always going to be racist. It's not going to stop being racist. The unfortunate thing about it is we're born in a time we have to fight, scratch, and claw to get past the racism. I want to cuss like a mug right now. Forget that kicker. So what? I saw this stuff on Twitter about him. I mean, so what, man? Listen, in 2001, my wife's birthday, and I cracked open 2 bottles of nice red, and we had the kids at the babysitter, and I had the Michigan shorts, the yellow Michigan shorts on. That's all I had on. And I heard this noise in my backyard. And I think I might have mentioned this the first show, but you know, we had these rabbit cages I built for the kids, and you know, raccoons would mess with them all the time. So I go to chase these raccoons away. I look over, and it's 2 big dudes spray painting on my house.
Wow.
With masks on. It's ridiculous. So I go over to confront these dudes and trip over a bench that my wife has been trying to get me to move for years. As I tripped over this bench, this guy swung a 2x4 and it barely hit me. If it would have caught me flush, I wouldn't be here right now. I truly believe that. Because he didn't catch me flush, I was able to react and uppercut him, and I tried to punch his face through the spout. They said, let's get the F out of here, and they ran out. I had a t-shirt company at the time called Point 5. Half of one. My kids are mixed. 2 of my kids are mixed. I was trying to create a vacuum where they would be respected based on their racial makeup. This was 1998 where we started this. We were selling out crazily. We were becoming a force. We had this one t-shirt that had racism in a semicircle in the middle of it. In the back of it had racism on like a horror font. And under that it had every racial slur you ever had. Start with nigger. Cracker necks. Everything else. With the bottom of my head, you've said dumb, you've been called dumb, you've heard dumb. Racism is a man-made, damn man for making it. We saw old ladies wearing our apparel. Elevators, people riding on bikes. It's like hearing a song on the radio. We were at the Javits Center. We were at the Magic Show in Vegas. This thing was becoming a force. It's unfortunate that it broke up. But as this thing was happening in my backyard, and me basically being exposed and vulnerable, somehow I got these big dudes. They were like 6'5". I got them to run through my backyard, and I go in the house, and I'm bleeding down my face from this 2x4, and say to my wife, call the cops. The first thing she said was, who do you think you are, Martin Luther King? After that, I'm sorry, white people, for me saying this, You got to prove to me that you're not racist. I'm not going to sit here and say and be loyal to humanity and say to you that you aren't racist on face value. Prove it to me. If my wife in an instance said what she said to me, instead of just picking up the damn phone and calling the cops, you're all capable of it. Because after 400 and almost 500 years, we're still discussing race. We're still discussing the fact that we've had one president. One. You understand me? One. Okay? So I'm not going to sit here and say to you that racism does not exist. It obviously does. I'm not going to be shocked when I see a 3% tattoo on a football player.
Right.
I'm not going to give it credence. I'm not going to give it respect. I could care less about this dude. I know I've played with racists. I know I've played with probably KKK members. As long as you one, I can care less. I would hope that the truth of us, of actual humans, comes to the fore, and you aren't racist. You voted in a president who was obviously racist. We can go back to the Central Park 5, the exonerated 5. Go back to his practices as a landlord. Okay, the fact he's called people good on both sides. I'm not going to be belittled and insulted, intelligent-wise. Are you making excuses? My wife and I also walked in loan places and tried to get loans. If I walked in first, I didn't get it. She walked in, she got it. I had to prove to her that racism exists. If you're not part of seeing racism, if you haven't experienced it, you cannot relate. No white person that has ever existed better not tell me that racism doesn't exist. You aren't qualified. You should be the last person speaking about race and what is racism. And what is so disgusting to me is black people sitting here and trying to give these people a pass for a racist past, as if it does not become our future, because it is our present. It's on us. I'm sorry, it's on us. It ain't on nobody but us. We got to step up and stand in their face and disprove it. We cannot sit here and talk this little politician talk around it because we're afraid to lose our money. Him and whoever else, I can give a damn about them. The fact that we even talking about him, not talking about you again personally, the fact that this guy has even been given any part of the news is embarrassing to me. You won't sit here and give all the people who have died along the time of our existence here true and proper credit, but we're going to sit here and almost build this white supremacist base for the people who are wanting to be part of white supremacy by talking about this dude, because that's what's happening right now. We're seeing the Confederate flags all over the place. It's just very sad to me that after all of our time on this soil, that we don't punch racism in the goddamn face every time we see it, regardless of what they say about us and what they think about us. I got a lot of white people who I love and that are friends with me, but they know what I'm coming for. They know I won't stop until I see it in. This shit right here with this dude, man, is disgusting to me. Who gives a damn about a kicker? Not a kicker who like it. I mean, they're talking about the kickers who have done things like Seabass and the rest of these dudes. We talking about a guy who just got onto the team. Like I told y'all before, we got to get through so many things when we even approach the word nigger. The reasons for it, but we don't we are cowards. Black people, you are cowards. We're not facing this as it is with base, with a soldier mentality and a militaristic way to get it out of our civilization. Until you do that, I don't respect you. I love you, but I don't respect you. And I got to be unapologetic with it because that's how we have to be, or it will continue. We will allow the racists who live next to us, who work with us, who sleep next to us, to continue to be who they are. I need a drink, y'all. Anybody need a drink? No, anybody want a shot? Oh my God, man.
Well,
hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I'm so glad I didn't.
Go ahead. Take it where you are.
Cheers, brother.
I'm so glad I didn't say his name. We didn't say his name
Purposely for me.
Yeah. So,
but I knew I was feeding the bear when I threw it out there.
well, here's the funniest thing, Mike. I hadn't even heard about it until Rob brought it up. So I'm actually not fanning that flame or fueling that fire. Luckily, and we didn't say his name. We could say F you, but we're not saying his name. So, anything else about the actual draft? Like, Burrow went 1 as expected. Do we want to talk about Tua? Do we want to talk about the Packers drafting a quarterback? Even though there's no Packers fans here.
They're definitely making a big issue out of that in the media about Aaron Rodgers and was it the right thing to do? How should he feel? Like, dude is 37 years old. They don't have anyone behind him. Right. I mean, shouldn't it be time to get a backup quarterback? Or someone that you're going to groom at some point?
And they drafted him.
Do you wait till he leaves and then decide, I'm going to get a quarterback and it may not be the one you want?
I mean, they drafted him, right?
Right. Exactly. So he has no reason to be upset. He was in the same boat.
Yeah.
All right. So, and here in Philly, it's the noise is becoming so loud that friends are calling me and texting me, because they know that leading up to the draft, the one name that I mentioned more than anyone was Jalen Hurts. I looked at the statistics and I compared them to his predecessors in Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. They're superior. What was Oklahoma 10-2 last year? Was something like that. In that game that they lost,
I think they were 10-2.
He was over 500 yards in total offense. They got down, and he fought like a champion to get them back. Right then, I knew that if I had the number 1 pick in the draft, I'm picking Jalen Hurts. Again, man, I wish I was born in the future. Like, I really do wish I was born in the future. Because right now, we're seeing that how quarterbacks running for a certain amount of yards, whatever, it's dismissed, man. It's not even spoken about. And that's the reason why I was so holding the lack of defense thing. Okay? Because the total player is what I want on my team. I want a total player. The total quarterbacks that are entering the league now, what happens is these GMs think because they got these great players in the backfield that can do so many things, they can take away a player. But they lost in the playoffs. So Jalen Hurts is a dynamo. If you see the interview that he did with ESPN, where he just gave so much of his soul. I posted on my page a few times, and it was just, I just think the coincidence of me talking about him so much. And there's a guy, a good brother, a friend of mine. His name was Maurice Powell. He played at Penn State, and got into the NFL a little bit. And we follow each other because he had a blog back then, and I had my blog as well. He was the first guy. He's now a coach. Shout out to his son. I hope his son, becomes who he wants to be, who he needs to be. But he was the first comment on my page after I brought up Jalen Hurts, because I was interested to see how he would fall. We're in a crazy time, y'all. We're in a crazy time. The rushing yards are simply not respected. They're simply not respected. If you have
no running backs in the first round.
If you have a quarterback that can throw for 3,000 or 4,000 yards, as their peers can do, right? And yet run for 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 yards? Doesn't that make them a better player? So I got into many debates about Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts. And the fact that Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield both won the Heisman. But this dude he was invited to Manhattan. But everybody said, oh, it's Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow had a simply historic year. I think he threw for 4,700 yards. And, he amassed with 50 touchdowns, stuff like that. But if you combine rushing and passing yards of Jalen Hurts, the stats are similar. What was the difference between Oklahoma and LSU was one thing. And that's the key word for today's show: defense.
I thought you were going to say coaching, because that's your other word. But yeah, defense.
Other word too. I mean, as athletes, it all matters. But
yeah,
so I call them shoulder chips. It's something that I've coined for a while. Instead of people saying chips on the shoulder, I say shoulder chips. Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts has all the shoulder chips that he needs to become a great player. When talents like that fall in the draft, they're inspired by the fall. Aaron Rodgers is one of them. Dan Marino, Randy Moss, so many others.
What's crazier to me is that Randy Moss's son, who didn't drop a pass in the postseason, and who I think maybe only had a couple drops the whole year, didn't get drafted at all.
There was questions about his speed. I'm glad you said that, because this is what I want people to pay attention to. We have Mel Kiper and Todd McShay evaluate drafts every season, and we kind of take them as we deify them for their knowledge and data.
I don't.
But listen,
I've been wondering my whole life how these guys get jobs.
The average fan does, right? The average fan does.
Right.
They want to have jobs. Todd McShay and Mel Kiper have been wrong about every multi-talented quarterback that they've ever spoken about. They might have flip-flopped later on as the draft happened, or they saw a little bit of that quarterback in the NFL. They have been wrong every single time. Every single time. But yet, they still have jobs. I do not think that is not by design. So what I want people to understand is this. I want people to look at film on Jalen Hurts. You tell me why he deserves a third-round grade over his peers. What you got to tell me specifically. I don't want to hear what you got to say about Mel Kiper and Todd McShay. I want to hear why 3,851 yards and 1,298 rushing yards is not like crazy. Like it's Cam Newton. It's Deshaun Watson. It's Lamar Jackson. Cam Newton was the only one who was picked number 1, and that's only because he was so beastly on that Auburn team in the SEC that you had to draft him number 1. I want people to seriously listen to what I just said. You got to give me a reason why he fell. You got to give me a reason why he's a 3rd round pick. Outside of what your eyes show you. And why, after Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, he was the one that all of a sudden people became critical of. Why wasn't he given the respect of that loss? I forget who it was. It was against a good team, against a good team that they lost the game. They got blown out early, and Jalen Hurts kind of fought back to make the score respectable. And I forget what it is. I'm sorry. I should know this. But that he was allowed to he was not allowed to crash this Joe Burrow party as this Joe Burrow is the greatest thing we've ever seen because of the Joe Brady thing and the comparisons to Tom Brady. And I mean, that these media members sit here and talk about so many times that we sit here and listen to without truly criticizing the messenger. We have to criticize the messenger when we see things like this because it shows that what it does is make players like Jalen Hurts fall. And then on something we surprised. So here in Philadelphia, Carson Wentz has been injury prone. I compare him to my boy, I love you, Chris Webber, Ken Griffey Jr., Grant Hill. He's that good. I truly believe that Carson Wentz is a Hall of Famer. It's not here, though. The best quarterback for this team at the time was Nick Foles. I caught a lot of wreck for saying that. But it was proven the next season, and the first half of the playoff game, he goes into the tent after getting paid $130 million. Okay, so people are upset that they drafted a guy who fell in the draft because people didn't respect his talent and don't even know why. They don't even know why. He's a 3rd round pick.
You know what? I base that on the same thing that I see with some of these basketball players. They're not sexy enough. It's not that they don't have the skill or the same tools that other quarterbacks have. I could see it from the time they started mentioning Tua before Jalen Hurts lost his job in Alabama. Tua was the sexier quarterback as far as his play was concerned. His ball was on a tight rope. He threw a hard ball. All the things that people get caught up in, like I said, when they start looking at highlights, they start looking at, they looked at Peyton Manning the same way. They looked at Peyton Manning the way he, how hard he could throw a ball. Same with Brett Favre. Didn't have anything to do with them misreading defenses and throwing interceptions. Oh, he'll get it right the next time. This kid's he's smart. He'll get it. He'll figure it out. But we got to ride with him. And when they want to ride with you, they put all the resources behind you to make sure that you succeed.
Exactly.
They don't always put the resources behind somebody they don't feel is sexy enough for them. So they may not put all the resources behind Jalen. It depends on how things unfold. If Wentz gets hurt again, then they may be forced to.
I see Jalen Hurts as being the quarterback of this team 6 games into the season if COVID-19 doesn't eliminate the season. The point I'm trying to make to people is this. Nick Saban, who has been his quarterbacks? Like what quarterbacks have like succeeded on the NFL level that he's had on his team. Tua and Jalen Hurts are the two best. Right?
Yeah.
The best. So
I'm willing to guess that he's gonna.
Why are we respecting like Nick Saban's decision to bench Jalen Hurts? Like and all of a sudden after he did that, it kind of like eliminated Jalen Hurts from anything. Like, and then all of a sudden when he goes to Lincoln Riley, you know, we say to him, okay, Baker and Kyler Murray aren't the system of Lincoln Riley, but all of a sudden now Jalen Hurts is. Like it's because of writers, dude. It's because of writers not respecting us as black quarterbacks. They know it is job security. Again, they see their sons. They want their sons to be the quarterback. We are never going to be respected as leaders. So Jalen Hurts is falling into that mindset. It's the only reason why. Even after what Lamar Jackson did last year. And I wish to God that they did not lose that Tennessee game. Derrick Henry is a beast. He's a beast.
Yes, he is.
I'm saying he's a beast. But it took Baltimore to show the league that time of possession matters. Okay, so what Tennessee did was take that and put a 299 million pound back in the backfield and just lead to victory with the Tannehill at quarterback. Okay, so all this time where all these pundits, these Skip Bayless and all these clowns say to themselves that the running back doesn't matter. He's undervalued. He's only going to last 3 years into the league. Okay, if LA featured Todd Gurley like they should have, they might be NFL champions right now. Okay,
Agreed.
So here in Philadelphia, you know, everybody is so down on this pick, the same way they were when 5 got drafted. I'm hearing this. The talk radio is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, man. They're like, oh my God, Howie Roseman, you got to be fired. Despite them drafting a bevy of receivers in the latter rounds. You know? And I got to say this as well. When Carson Wentz came here and he signed his contract and everything else, they put everything around him. These dudes just got hurt. But the narrative here is that he doesn't have the weapons. Who was a guy from Chicago that I'm getting old, y'all. I'm forgetting names, man. You gotta say a name 3 times for me to remember it now. You know, but the receiver from Chicago, the Bears. You know, what's his name that he came to here?
From the Bears to there.
Yeah. They gotta drop the pass versus the Saints.
Wow, who was that?
Come on, Trey. That's your squad. Alshon Jeffrey.
Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah. Okay.
And when I got Alshon, they had Zach Ertz. At the time, they had Selleck. I mean,
shout out to Julie Ertz. Sorry.
Shout out to Julie Ertz. They had some great receivers. Like they had talent. And then they went out and got Deshaun Jackson. You know, I told you guys my story about him last week. But, you know, it's not like they didn't give this guy weapons. And I just wish, like, outside of Deshaun Watson and Dante Culpepper, black quarterbacks just aren't given these weapons. They just aren't. It's job security. They do not want these dudes to succeed. Baltimore stepped into the fire and put the fire out. And even after they lost, all of a sudden it became Patrick Mahomes' league. What they should have been saying is now you have a Peyton Manning to Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson will continue to be rivals across their careers. And then O'Brien goes down and trades his top receiver that's probably going to be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done and leaves his multi-talented quarterback bare. Like, there's so much criticism to go around. Like I'm seeing these trends because there's something that I've followed and I've written about. I've written about so many stories about the black quarterbacks change the narrative. It's disgusting to me. Like I go back to Marlon Briscoe. I want to see something different. Like white people, I'm asking y'all to step up to the plate. I'm asking you to be intelligent in your decision making and your judgment of people. I'm not asking you to sit here and eliminate folks just so you could be the only one of reason. We want equal parts. We seriously want equal parts. And until we don't have equal parts, I can't F with you. I want you to step it up. I want you to be who you are like you want us to be who we are. I'm tired of saying this. Like, you're not going to get any respect from me. Why does Jalen Hurts fall in the draft? Why did Russell Wilson fall in the draft? Why did Lamar Jackson fall in the draft despite production? Production that was better than their peers. And then when they outperform their white peers, there's this shock. What is this shock? It was always there. Deshaun Watson coming to the league, you said that he was turnover prone, despite him throwing for less interceptions than the people that got drafted before him. You can't, like, these excuses that you bring every year around draft time, you can't skate them past us anymore. Like, we got the info out there. We have our own eyes to see the actual performances of these quarterbacks. You have to start adding rushing yards to the quarterback rating. When that happens, I'll know it's real. It has to be added. The rushing yards have to be added to the quarterback rating so that number, that 820 rushing yards that Russell Wilson had, that you failed to mention, all the yards that Cam had as a rookie, but you failed to mention, and he passed for 4,000 yards, your benchmark, and set an NFL record on the ground. Cam Newton has 58 rushing touchdowns, more than many Hall of Fame running backs. That matters to victory. Jalen Hurts coming to the league and succeeding should not be a shock to you. Why is it a shock? Why do you disrespect it? I'm asking you, why do you disrespect it, white people? I don't know how else to put it to you. For people here in Philadelphia, let me tell you something straight up. Your boy has been hurt. He is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I have talked to him. He has eagle eyes. He's one of the best character dudes I've ever spoken to. He is the real deal. Carson Wentz is great, but he is injury prone. How long are you going to deal with it? Why are you critical of Howie Roseman for making the common sense decision? If Carson Wentz gets hurt, are you cool with Sunveld, or whatever the hell his name is, as his backup? Or do you want a guy that can come in and do exactly what he does all over the field? Why are you so critical of the pick? Is it because it's a black quarterback and a team that has had a myriad of black quarterbacks? And all of a sudden you call Carson Wentz the best quarterback on this team historically? And you said this every chance you get when he was rolling? But now that he is falling off and he was 5 and 6 at one time and you were calling for his head? So now that Howie Roseman hurt you and picked the dude who's capable, you want to dismiss him? You can't have it both ways. I'm not going to ever give it to you both ways. I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to sit here and wait for y'all to think that I'm going to shut up. I'm going to provide you with facts, And I'm going to tell you exactly about yourself till you get it. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's what it is.
Wow.
It is.
So I want to talk about Jordan Love, but then I also want to talk about Khalil Tate. So since we're already in Philly, Trey and Mike, do you guys have any thoughts on Khalil Tate being drafted out of Arizona?
Great.
And
Is a great pick.
Being moved to receiver, a quarterback.
If he came into the league saying that he wanted to be a quarterback, I have a problem with it. But he was cool with being changed. If he thinks that that's how he's going to make his mark, I'm good with it. But again, you know what I mean? The decision shouldn't have been made outside. It should have been made within. He made the decision. I'm cool with it. I think that it's going to be a great pick. Again, they're trying everything they can to provide Carson Wentz with weapons. And a lot of people were just not excited with the names that were called. And I'm like, yo, do you watch college football, first of all? And this guy is trying to make his mark. He decided to move to receiver. I'm good with it.
Do you feel like, well, Trey, do you have anything before I ask this follow-up? You're muted.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. It was just the kids making noise in the background.
Okay. So that being said, okay, so he moves to receiver and he becomes a receiver. However, do you feel like he'll maybe be utilized like, and the name escapes me, but the former third string quarterback in New Orleans? What's his name?
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, Taysom Hill. You feel like they'll use him like him because they'll need to obviously protect Jalen Hurts? Mike, you feel like he'll get snaps at quarterback?
I mean, I think that the league is still primitive, yet it is trying to stroke a popular form of extension with a multifaceted player, the wildcat player, which is essentially the wild dog player in Michael Vick, right? Right? Let's be honest. So, now that the league is seeing success, and especially, I want to drive this point home about time of possession. It proves victorious. It always has. If you have a team that is throwing the ball down the field and scoring in 1 or 2 plays, 3, 4 plays, your defense is going to be tired.
Right.
Okay? That's as simple as it is. It's as simple as it is. So when you have
Baltimore got better.
8-minute drives, your defense can be fresh in the fourth quarter and will stop you. So I see that the NFL is trying to implement, these type of talents any way they can without taking Tom Brady's job and white horse shining armor sense of symbolism that keep fans in the seats. But these dudes, they're beckoning. Like you can't stop them. They're going to enter the league and they're going to do something. The whole Taysom Hill thing is in New Orleans and Jameis Winston signing there disgusts me. I mean, it's ridiculous. But what they should have done is sign Teddy Bridgewater and allow him to be their quarterback. They're going to allow a guy who's throwing 6 passes in the NFL to actually be an actual quarterback. Like they're trusting him like that. So all of the trust that you're giving Taysom Hill, you don't want to give Teddy Bridgewater or Jalen Hurts to fall in the draft. Like I can't with these people, man. I can't with this. And I can't with the allowance of us as people and truly intelligent men to not challenge this. Like every single time, it should be like the first response to this stuff should be a challenge. It should be an imperative. But I mean, it should be an imperative. The imperative to be, where is the black ownership in the NFL? So if you had the black ownership in the NFL, authentic black ownership, I ain't talking about no coon shit. I'm talking about authentic black ownership to be able to balance out these narratives to where these football men that were quarterbacks in the league, the Randall Cunninghams, Don McNabbs, Russell Wilsons, and what have you, become actual head coaches. Okay, so when they become head coaches, then you will start to see it balance out because they're going to try to put their mind on the field the way that Sean Payton has Drew Brees. Okay,
Agreed.
it's as simple as that. But we don't challenge. We continue to watch. We continue to watch a league that has a Redskins name in DC. The Redskins is not the color of skin. It's the color of the scalping. Okay? You have a murderous name in DC. We don't want to face that. We want to face the entertainment because we need entertainment. And we're seeing now that in this COVID-19 era, that sports is more important than we think it is. It's leisure. But yeah, I dig the pick, man. I dig all the Eagles picks. And I've done this for the first time in a long time. You know, I was immediately a Carson Wentz guy. Even when people saying that, you know, we don't know how he was going to be coming out of North Dakota State. I just saw something in him. You see from the eye test. You can see the eye test that Carson Wentz is great. The same as you could have seen if your eyes were open wide shut about Lamar Jackson, Sean Watson, Warren Moon.
Yeah.
Now
I didn't even think it was a close second between Carson Wentz and Jared Goff when they came out. No. I didn't understand what the Rams were thinking about. There's a gap between them.
It's the eye test. It's a statue figure. The symbolism of it. The guy looks the part.
I thought this draft overall was kind of weak, just across the board. I didn't see anybody who normally in the draft you see some really big standouts. I didn't see any really big standouts this year. I saw some really good players. I'm really high on Baltimore getting J.K. Dobbins at running back. I think they are going to be. I think that's like a match made in heaven for them. And then I just saw across my screen that they just signed DJ Fluker, who's a road grade blocker on the offensive line. I'm like, whoa, they may be back in the Super Bowl again this year if things go right.
Wait, who are you talking about?
Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, okay.
They added Dobbins from the running back from Ohio State, and this dude can go. I mean, he could really go.
And we owe them one because
I owe him one.
We lost one. We lost one to Baltimore. So I'm good with going back against Baltimore this year. Go 49ers. I'm down with that.
Michigan. Dobbins a beast at Ohio State, man.
Hey,
my Michigan hurt.
Yeah.
Trey is leaving us soon, so I want to get to the last dance, but just really quickly, Jeff Ireland is the GM of the Saints, and he says that Jameis Winston will learn more in a year under the offensive coordinator whose name I can't think of. Pete Carmichael, the quarterback's coach, Joe Lombardi, Sean Payton, the head coach, and of course Drew Brees as a mentor. So between the four of them, they say Jeff Ireland says that Jameis Winston will learn more in his life, learn more in one season than he has in his entire lifetime of football.
How many Super Bowls does Drew Brees have?
One.
Okay. So
same as Sean Payton.
It's like the respect to passing yards. The guy who's thrown for the third most passing yards ever, all of a sudden is going to learn something from the people who haven't won Super Bowls. Like, this is ridiculous, man. Like, come on, this is ridiculous. It's crazy to me. Like, when are we gonna step up as black men and appreciate ourselves to where we're not even listening to this bull crap?
So this is my challenge here to Jeff Ireland. This gentleman is a prolific passer already. So if you say he will learn how to cut down on interceptions, that's one thing. But to say that he will learn more in one season in your organization than he has in his lifetime of football, and he's an elite football player, he's an elite quarterback in the elite league in the world, that's an embarrassing statement to me. And boy, does it discount all that he's learned, just self-learned, and then all the people that he's been with. It's just, I think it's an embarrassing
trying to better his franchise, just trying to say something that, you know what I mean, makes his, like, put his franchise in a situation where they're the best franchise out there and they produce players and
all right. So in the first 5 years of their careers, Peyton Manning 6206, 20,618 passing yards, 138 touchdowns, 100 interceptions, 108 sacks, 27 fumbles, 42-38 record. Jameis Winston in first 5 years, 61.76 completion percentage, 19,693 yards, 120 pass and touchdowns, 86 interceptions compared to 100. 163 sacks compared to 108 sacks for Peyton. 50 more fumbles, 27-40 record. These clowns today said something. They said the reason why he has 163 sacks is because he holds on to the ball too long. Remember when I told you about Michael Vick and that stat before?
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. The same thing applies to Jameis Winston. If you do not have separation, you're going to hold the ball until you get separation. I'm not saying here saying that Jameis Winston is superiorly great over everybody else. He has his issues, but his fallacies aren't allowed to be fallacies when his peers' fallacies are allowed to be the exception to get them to maintain a job and get that $100 million contract.
My argument is let him have the weapons that the other people have, and I don't believe that we're having this conversation.
Right.
It's that simple. It's not that. It's the running game. It's the running game. That's what it is. Despite all these dudes passing for all these yards, they've always had a semblance of a running game, including Drew Brees. When he's wanted to hand the ball off to get that 3rd and 10 off a draw, he gets it.
I consider so weapons. That's what I'm saying. Weapons.
Yeah, true, but you got specifically say running record.
Running weapons. Sorry. My bad, Mizzo. I thought I was finally giving a comment that you would run with.
Man, I gotta challenge it from the point of contention with base every time. I cannot sit here and give them pass or credit. You know what I mean? I can't do it. Like, don't even debate me. You know what I'm coming with when I come in the door, folks. The punditries, whatever you want to call yourselves, and don't laugh when I bring up certain points that you're uncomfortable with. It's going to be said, and it's immediately going to be said, and I'm going to challenge you to come with something to counter it.
Well, they're definitely coming to the defense of Aaron Rodgers not getting receivers and skilled players in this draft, which I don't think it would have changed anything because you don't see a rookie receiver come in and dominate his first season. But they're running to the defense of him, saying he should have got something. You know, why did Green Bay trade up to come get this quarterback when they could have grabbed a receiver or tight end or running back or something for him? And they come to the defense of
they see
who
their
they want.
They see their sons. They do not want us to ascend To a
You
leadership
got to think about the long-term health of. What's interesting is that, and I want to get to basketball, but what's interesting is that this is a black quarterback. This is a black quarterback, right? Jordan Love is a black quarterback, right? Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting that in that town, and they have drafted a black quarterback before, fell out of UCLA. But I'm saying it's interesting that that with this he happens. I wonder if we'd have the same controversy. Well, no, not air quotes. Take out the air quotes. I wonder if we'd have the same controversy if he weren't a black quarterback. Would it just be like, oh, they're just fortifying the quarterback position?
Matt Flynn.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, nobody fussed about Matt Flynn. Not that I remember. And they stayed high on Matt Flynn for a while too. He milked some checks for a while.
Get paid off for one game.
Well, you look at future Hall of Famers that came in. Man, all right. Do you want to say anything about The Last Dance before you go, Trey?
Oh man, if I start talking about it, I'll probably go on and on. It's so much. Like I can't just break it down, especially because it's just 2 episodes. But hey, it was great. It was great, and they went through a lot that people on the outside didn't know that they had to deal with. But Phil Jackson, it was Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan. That core that they had together was like no other. That was like a brotherhood that they had that no one. You had to be in that 4 to understand that 4. You know what I mean? And the way that they came together to have one another's back and all of that was great. See, I can't get into it because then I'm gonna get into Rodman and all of that, and just y'all talk about it, man. I'll catch up on the next one, and yeah, you guys have a good one because there's a lot said about Rodman too,
And we'll have, I'm sure, episodes 5 and 6 to talk about next week. So.
No more strippers, man.
Good luck at the doctor, man.
Man. You gotta balance it out, man. You can't keep the stripper on one side. You gotta make sure you go left and right.
Understand, Britt, that this is not Toni talking. This is the other two. I'm not involved in these.
And I am definitely joking. So I will put that out there.
Absolutely.
You're feeling it in stress.
Baby, man. Everything's gonna be good, my man. I can't wait to see the baby pictures, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna highlight y'all in a minute. Y'all have a good show. Hey, see,
all right, Jay. Be safe.
Peace.
All right, fellas. You guys want to stay like this or like this?
Yeah, that's good. That's good with the 3 of us. That one.
Okay. This one? Okay. So yeah, all right. Well, for me, episodes 3 and 4, and I don't remember which was which, so it doesn't really matter. But like Sunday of The Last Dance I felt like it was mostly about Rodman. And when you talk about his impact on both sides, I feel like he impacted the Jordan Bulls in 2 different places. When you talk about how the bad boys played defense, how they played, and a lot of people said that it was dirty, but whatever you call it, it was what it was. It was the NBA. They had probably a more pronounced physical style than most teams or than most elite teams, and so some people called it dirty, but they played within the rules, right? And whenever they were outside of the rules, they were penalized accordingly. But Rodman being a large part of that, he wasn't Rick Mahorn. He wasn't the enforcer per se, but he played hard. He was very physical also. And when you talk about Jordan going back to the lab in that offseason and saying, after losing again to the Pistons, and saying, I have to bulk up. I want to punish them. It's not just about me avoiding being punished, but I want to punish them. You could say that Rodman helped shape the 91 Bulls in that regard after they lost to the Pistons 2 years in a row. And then him coming for the last dance, helped shape that. So I felt like he was impactful. He impacted both runs by Jordan. By Jordan's Bulls, I should say, by Jordan and Pippen in the Bulls. So that was, I knew that. Well, I didn't know about the bulking up part. I also didn't know.
I remember that
it was specific to Tex Winter, that it was, Tex Winter and Phil, but really Tex, if you pass the ball more, if you set your teammates up, you will be greater. I didn't know that was attributed to them, and maybe that's a little too oversimplified. Mm-hmm. I always thought it was Jordan coming to the realization that he needed to incorporate his teammates more to be greater, to win more. I didn't know that.
That's a myth. That's a myth to make Jordan sound really unselfish. Jordan knew how many shots he was going to get every game. And they had to also assure Jordan that with the triangle, he was still going to get his shots and get the same amount of points that he had been used to. All players who average 25 or 30 don't do it by accident. Even as much as they say LeBron is so unselfish and all these other players who they claim are so unselfish, every superstar player has a selfish side. Mm-hmm. I don't care who it is.
I have to.
They may be willing to pass when necessary, because in a game like basketball, you have to pass. There's never a time when you get through a whole game and they just give you a shot. At some point, somebody's going to run over to take a charge, or the coaches are designing stuff for this. They're going to set up and say, hey, you know what? He goes north and south full speed. Let's set somebody up to take a charge. Or he can't move laterally, so let's keep him going to, like they pointed out that they tried to keep Jordan going left at all times because he finishes better with his right hand. I mean, they design, things to slow you down, to make sure that they can get the best chance of stopping you, especially when you have an elite skill level like Jordan. You don't really have too many weaknesses, which is why I said, as scary as Jordan was, I look at T-Mac and Kobe, and they were even more frightening, because there wasn't anything offensively they couldn't do. They didn't have a weakness. I mean, and Kobe took it up a notch. Jordan didn't have great shooting range. He would kill you from 21 on in. I mean, it was like almost impossible to stop. But when you start getting out there to that 22, 23, 24, his stock goes down, which is why he didn't, over the course of his career, shoot a lot of threes. But with the other part of his game, he did not have a weakness. And defensively, you had to do stuff. You have offensively, you have to be selfish, but when your team depends on you to score, you have to. There's no way around it. And there are times when you have to score, which is why I've always knocked LeBron. Because there are times when you have to be selfish. You did giving up a difficult shot for someone who can't shoot, to me, is a waste. I've never understood that. So when I hear the narrative, LeBron doesn't have a team, he doesn't have any teammates, and then I say, well, gosh, do you realize who Kobe took to the championship? Besides Gasol, outside of that, you're talking about what's the big African guy's name that played center, the backup? I know he was great in like martial arts, but he wasn't a great basketball player. I mean, like, I forget this dude's name, and AC, I know you know who I'm talking about. He had the big ears and the big forehead, about my complexion. But you talking about Luke Walton on the wing? I mean, like, really? You gonna pass up a difficult 17-footer over two people to kick it to Luke Walton at 24 feet, who can't throw a rock in the ocean? I would rather you take that difficult 17-footer, especially in the course of when Jordan was speaking, which I'm glad he came out and said it. Now, a lot of this show doesn't tell the whole story because Jordan says there was no way I was going to give Bill Cartwright the ball with 5 seconds left on the shot clock. He said that's a waste, which I completely agree with, which is why when I come at LeBron about not taking shots, I get upset because I'm like, why are you going to kick that ball out to a stiff? Take that what they would call difficult bad shot or difficult shot. I mean, today the NBA is nothing but bad shots. They come down, they don't set up plays, they just launch a three. You got a 3-on-1 fast break, nobody cutting to the basket on the wing. They go float to the 3-point line and wait for a kick out. On a 3-on-1, nobody's trying to get, a easy layup or a quick dunk. They're standing out there by the 3-point line. So if I was playing today and I'm looking for somebody to cut, I would just automatically throw the ball and probably throw it straight out of bounds because there would be nobody there. They'd be standing 25 feet away. I'd be lost. I won't lie. But I thought it was interesting that Jordan pointed that out, that he didn't want Cartwright taking shots in the last 5 seconds of the shot clock. But it didn't stop there. If you watch the Bulls, they gave Cartwright the ball the first 5 to 10 trips down the floor just to establish him, just to make him a threat early in the game. But not only did he not touch the ball in the last 5 seconds of the shot clock, he didn't touch the ball after he subbed out in the first quarter. He didn't get nowhere near a pass. They only gave him the ball early just to make him an early threat, to say if we can get a couple baskets out of him these first few minutes, that'll set the tone for the rest of us. Now that'll give the defense something to think about. But they didn't want Cartwright touching the ball. So Jordan had his selfish side. All players do. There were times where, as much as Magic passed, there were times where you were not going to get the ball out of Magic's hands. Ever. When that shot clock is running down and Kareem is on the bench or he's covered and there's nobody else that's wide open, Magic is not going to give that ball up. And when I say wide open, it's got to be worthy. I don't mean giving it to Kurt Rambis with 5 seconds left on the shot clock. That's not going to happen. Which is why Magic developed that running hook shot, because he's like, I got to have a pet move to make sure I get a shot off when times get rough, which, is what I beg younger players to do. MJ had that untouchable turnaround jump shot. You couldn't guard it. It was his pet move. And players don't have pet moves today. is now they've found a loophole in the rules, and now they do this step back that I hate.
Travel.
I don't care how many times people tell me, well, you got to look at the gather. For me, it's a travel. Now, when I'm on the floor, I got to go by what the rule book says. I have to, if the rule book says it, I have to look at the gather. I have to look at the pivot foot and all of that kind of stuff. But just with the naked eye and how the game has been played up until the last, I would say, 10 years, they getting away with murder. They finding loopholes all over the place and getting away with it. My biggest takes of watching that show is all the things that weren't said and all the things that they didn't bring into focus that was, for me, critical, that I remember from that time period. Number one, I remember Rodman when he first started to change his look and his appearance. And I remember an interview he did where he said, I got to do something because people aren't paying money for tickets to see a rebounder. They're going to always come pay and see Jordan and Pippen because they can shoot, because they have a game that's appealing. But I hustle, I rebound, I dive on loose balls, I play defense. No one cares about that. They care about in the grand scheme of things as far as winning the game, but they don't care about that when it comes to who's important. So he was always trying to fight for his importance, as was Horace Grant, which they kind of alluded to towards the end about their importance on the team. Rodman, for me, is the greatest defender that I've ever witnessed. His body type, his size, his athleticism, his mentality, mixed with the things that you teach as well as what you can't teach, as far as him being able to chase down a rebound based on who's shooting. Now that was deeper for me because he said based on who was shooting, he knew how they spent the ball and he would chase it accordingly. I've never heard.
It was geometry and calculus in the same,
mental
equation. Crazy.
He was on another level. Yeah. I mean, he could slip screens. He could make himself skinny and slip screens like no other. He could fight through double teams like no other legally. I'm not talking about some of these guys just, well, there's a screen right there and I'm going to just blast this dude and get through it and hope they don't call a foul. He did things legally and he was the best at it. So when I see these other dudes and some of these fans talking about defenders, I'm like, they don't look like that. They used to talk about, oh, Tony Allen was a great defender. Tony Allen was a physical defender. And some guys are good physical defenders where they can bump you up and they can chase you around and harass you a little bit. But they didn't always have the mentality. You got to have both to be elite. So that's why I constantly fuss and say there are really no elite defenders in the league today.
I think
the only thing that people throw out is Kawhi and Draymond. I'm like, that's all we got is two. Two. In an NBA where there's 300 and some players, we got two. So they don't have specialty players anymore like they did before. Where they had Paxson and Kerr. Their specialty was just spotting up, shooting threes. They had defenders on the team like Rodman, like Indiana had Derek McKee. Seattle had Nate McMillan. Mm-hmm. Every team back then had a defensive stopper that would chase your best player the whole night. And so we don't get that anymore. Chicago just happened to have 4 of them. So that's what made that 72 wins possible. You got Jordan, who's arguably the best defender in the league. You got Rodman, who's arguably the best defender in the league. And you got Pippen, who's arguably the best defender in the league. And what's not mentioned is Horace Grant was one of the best post defenders ever. And I guess that's why he feels slighted. But what's also not mentioned is the fact that, and it's funny because I talked about it with somebody yesterday, and then I came across an article about it on ESPN last night about Toni Kucoc and his role with the team. They don't mention that Scottie and Michael hated Toni Kucoc before he got to Chicago, because Jerry Krause had been wanting Toni Kucoc for years, and he wouldn't come to the States. And then he finally came, and Pippen was already pissed about his contract. And then you give this dude, who we just ganged up on in the Olympics, whatever he wants to get him here. It was kind of like, it wasn't kind of like, it was a slap in the face for Pippen. And so now you got Toni Kucoc coming to practice with bitter guys he's facing. I mean, like, if you guys remember the Olympics, and I still got it on video, they double teamed Kucoc in the gold medal game the whole entire game. They refused to let that dude get any breathing room. And when I saw the arguably two of the best defenders in the league guarding one player, and he still gets 16, 7, and 7 or something like that, I'm like, this white dude can really play. And he was only like 20 years old. And I said, this dude is the real deal. This ain't Joe Schmo guarding him. People feared Jordan. They would just give the ball up if they saw him coming. And he's guarding, honestly. I mean, one of my boys I grew up with, he's like, dude, I talked to him. He's like, man, we playing Chicago tonight. And as soon as Jordan got near him, he just gave it up before he even got to half court. And I'm like,
oh, you mean passed it? You don't mean just like gave the ball to Jordan? Okay, you just mean pass it.
No, both. They passed it or they just gave it up. I mean, I saw my boy sub at the table as soon as it happened. Like, up. And if I say the sub, it'll give away what team he played for and who he is. So I'm not even going to throw him under the bus. But, I mean, right away, Jordan got right up on him as soon as he crossed half court, and it was almost like he just gave up. Like, this is Jordan. And, Jordan, one thing Kobe learned from Jordan is that as soon as you smell somebody that was kind of weak, you just kill them for the rest of the night. I mean, there was so many things that Kobe took from Jordan and just ran with, like going after the best player on the team to establish your place, just trying to kill the best person. Kobe definitely got that from Jordan. But Kobe turned it around and did it to Jordan when he got booed in Philly at that All-Star game. And then he did it again when Jordan played for the Wizards, and he hit him for like 55 or something. And they were like, okay, Jordan needs to retire. This young gun is like giving him the blues right now. Even though that was his idol, he was like, man, I'm trying to put this dude. It was almost like watching when Ali fought Larry Holmes. Like, come get this old dude out of here. He's done. But I saw they didn't really talk on the Kucoc issue, and I know that was huge. And then when Rodman was signing the autographs, and this is going to go back to the point Mizzo was talking about, where we were talking about the opportunity that white quarterbacks get in NFL. Rodman is signing autographs, walking through the tunnel, and you see all these young white kids lined up at the gate with their paper and their shoe or jersey or whatever for Rodman to sign. And he's taking time out to, sign autographs and that kind of thing. And I start to think, they have so much accessibility to things that we don't. They have a dad or an uncle who works for the organization, or a family friend, or dad's co-worker, got backstage passes to whoever's concert or something like that. And, they know players, in the Bulls organization. So the kids get to come really close, or they get them a job as a ball boy and they get a chance to be around the players, 24/7 or whatever the case. And they pick up stuff that we have to fight for, and we don't get those opportunities. And so when it relates back to football and basketball, is because when you look at the history of the game, a lot of people get hired and get opportunities based on whose tree they came from. And Mizzo, I know you know what I'm talking about. Well, AC, you do too. They had that. I mean, Krzyzewski came from a coaching tree. Pat Riley came from a coaching tree. Pat Riley didn't have any experience as a coach when he got the job for the Lakers. People say, oh, LeBron didn't have a coach. Magic didn't either. Pat Riley had no experience. He was in the broadcast booth with Chick Hearn. They just said, hey, you know what? We fired Westfall. This guy has been in the organization in the broadcast booth. We're going to make him the coach. Phil Jackson was in the CBA. He didn't have any NBA experience, not as a coach. Not like you see Juwan Howard been sitting on the bench for years and didn't get a shot, or, especially getting a shot with a championship caliber team. Like when I've always noticed black coaches get a shot at coaching, it's always on a team that's rebuilding. Like Paul Silas, for me, was a great coach, but he got Charlotte. They didn't offer him a chance to coach, the New Jersey Nets with J Kidd and Kevin and Kmart, or the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, or anything like that.
They fired
the New Jersey Nets. The New Jersey Nets were a disgusting organization. I just want to reiterate that. I guess I'm saying it for the first time. They were a disgusting organization that did Byron Scott absolutely wrong, and I still have a grudge against Lawrence Frank. Even though, why wouldn't you take it if they offer it to you? But right. and I'm throwing shade at Jason Kidd because I feel like he fueled that, and I respect Jason Kidd otherwise, but I feel like he fueled that. So if Mizzo, you have something to dead what I'm thinking, then I'll take it. But that was Jason Kidd, and Frank was the recipient of it, so I don't like either one of them.
I was just speaking to
I was just saying overall, it normally comes from a tree where it's like a connection, and these same people get these opportunities over and they start them so young that by the time they do get fired, like a Luke Walton, or mutually part ways, they're young enough to just jump right back in the coaching loop. Like Bill Fitch, had the most losses in the history, but he always got a job. Always got a job. Good job.
So not
just any old job. Huh?
So will D and Toni.
Exactly my point. Yeah. And so and they're as bad as, and I just thought about it with football, as much chaos was going on with Kyle Shanahan, he's going to keep a job. Prior to San Francisco, there was nothing but chaos with him. And the Redskins, and prior to that, it was like the players don't like him. You know, players saying that he's calling bad plays, teams are losing, but he getting that opportunity. Offense coordinator. Yeah, if you keep giving a job to somebody, eventually they're going to find a good fit somewhere. But the coaches of color don't get the same opportunity. If they get fired once, they may get a second chance, and after that, we're not going to use you in that capacity. You can be a coordinator for the rest of your life. You can be a scout. You can be this. You can be that. But we're going to go with this younger, creative mind, is what is the term that they're using nowadays, because it's always some kind of term that's run with. You know, when there's a change coming, when there's change coming in the league, there's always something that they run with. And now it's the creative. It's an offensive creative mind. Defense coordinators aren't getting jobs anymore, besides Brian Flores. But from what I understand about Brian Flores in New England, is he was a player's coach, and he knew a lot about the game, but he didn't have the title of coordinator as far as defense or offense. But the players rave about him and said he knew the game in and out. So he got that shot, which I'm glad to see, even though I couldn't stand New England because I'm a Raider fan. He got a shot. And now they've, you know, I hope Tampa Bay does well, because they do have a coach of color. They have a GM of color. He's made some moves. He you know, Gronkowski. Say it again.
Tampa Bay?
Yes.
Who's the coach of color?
Brian Flores.
He's a Miami coach.
Is he? Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry.
Miami right there. I know definitely what you mean.
I hope Miami does well.
I mean, Eric Bieniemy should get a job just based off his name. I mean, good God.
He's got mad production. He should have.
Champion. Like Eric Bieniemy memorizes the entire game of plays before Sunday, and then recommendations to Andy Reid.
Yeah, he's overdue.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
That's
and they only brought him in for a couple of teams. They only interviewed him just to fulfill the Rooney Rule. They had no intentions of hiring that man anyway.
Dallas should have hired him.
They had no intention. They knew exactly who they wanted before they made a decision.
I mean,
Jerry Jones is very calculated. Very calculated. He thinks 2 or 3 steps ahead. So I'm sure he knew that he wasn't hiring Eric Bieniemy.
I mean,
I'm pretty positive to say that.
I've yet to see, like, what I want to see is, like, I thought that Pittsburgh should have taken Lamar Jackson. I'd love to see Denny Green with, you know, Randy Cunningham and Culpepper. You know,
Denny Green never got another coaching job.
Another coaching job. I mean,
that's crazy.
Look, y'all. I mean, it's crazy. But see, also the fallacy of the NBA. The fallacy is this: Tex Winter should have had a job a long time ago. He should have had an NBA job. When this whole GOAT discussion began, my counter with Michael Jordan being the GOAT, like definitive GOAT, was not Phil Jackson, but Tex Winter. It was Tex Winter. And when I would bring, they were like, who? What?
Wasn't sexy enough.
You know?
That's my earlier point. Wasn't sexy enough.
You don't know the game. Like, I always say to me, you don't know the game, but you don't understand what Tex Winter meant to basketball in general.
Right.
You are way behind the times. You just totally way behind the times. I really appreciated that they gave Tex Winter his due in these last couple episodes. But I will say this. What I am beginning to see, and I was hoping that I didn't see this, and the narrative leading into this, and they put out the sound bites of Michael Jordan saying that you're not going to like me after this series, right? But leading up to this series, what you're seeing of Mike is he's a snitch.
Definitely.
He's a snitch. He's a SNITCH. How many times you want to say it? He's a snitch. And he patently lied about the bad boys.
Yeah, I didn't agree with the stuff he was happening with and Mizzo, and that's what I really wanted to point to you, because you were on the East Coast writing, and I just shared this with someone else. You know, Isaiah pointed out the fact that the Celtics had walked off the floor, and they showed the clip of the Celtics walking off the floor with Detroit, and I had never seen that clip before, and that is probably the most low-profile thing that I've ever seen in sports, because they constantly have aired the video of Isaiah kind of dipping his head, walking past Jordan in that Eastern Conference Finals after Chicago swept them.
Look,
I mean, constantly. And they have never once aired, that I've seen, now I'm talking only for me, that I've seen, aired Celtics walking off the floor with time left of the game against Detroit. I've never seen it. And I thought that was really interesting, because Isaiah was right in his interview on First Take the next day that they shed a negative light on the Pistons. Did we lose sound?
No, I'm here. I heard you. I think.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Something happened with Mike. So yeah, you know what's interesting is I remember watching the Detroit. I remember watching all this, but I definitely remember watching the Detroit Celtics, that particular game, and my dad said, "Yeah, Kevin McHale just told Isaiah, you go out and beat them MFs." You know, talking about the Lakers, you go beat them MFs. And I was like, "Wow, is that what they do? Like, they tell them to go beat the other team?" And I was like, "Wow!" It was. I realized that it was because Detroit had finally gotten over the hill. But what they didn't show during the game, or if they did show it, I didn't notice it or recognize it, is that Boston was leaving, because I watched that game live.
Right.
I mean, not live. I wasn't there, but I watched it on TV when it was happening. But luckily for me, I also didn't remember Detroit walking off, and I think I didn't really remember it, probably because I associated it with the Celtics thing. Like, there wasn't a lot of all this hugs and kisses and stuff back then outside of Magic and Isaiah. And Magic caught a lot of flack for that whole the kiss thing with his really good friend.
Which is why he floored Isaiah in that first few trips down the floor when Isaiah went to the basket. Because remember, leading up to that finals, they were like, would Magic ever foul him hard if it were necessary? How do you separate your friendship with your best friend, who was Isaiah and Mark Aguirre, with, well, not the first series, Mark Aguirre wasn't there. But how do you separate that friendship from the bond that you have with your teammates?
First series, it happened with the Lakers and Dallas, because Aguirre.
Right. Yeah. And Magic was quick to make sure. I mean, he didn't even make a play on the ball. He killed Isaiah going to the basket. And there was no I apologize or let me help you up after that either.
Right.
He knocked him down and just walked away.
Right.
And so that certain things like that I miss about the game. There was rough play, and I'll be the first to admit that at times. But some of that rough play is where the rivalries came from in the first place. Like
Right.
for me, you don't get a real rivalry unless there's hatred involved. These rivalries where, oh, well, you know, this team, like they said, the Lakers and San Antonio were rivals at one point because they were both, you know, championship contenders. They just contenders. I mean, you know, when Magic was going on, he had to fight Dallas every year. He had to fight Seattle every year. Seattle was a rival, but you know, that's just basketball.
Right.
The hatred came
when
they faced the Celtics.
Right. And the Heat and the Knicks, they would actually fight. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I swore up and down Greg Kite for the Celtics only entered the game to give hard fouls. That's the only thing I ever saw him do.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in there to clothesline Lambeer, flip Worthy out of bounds. You know, that was his job, the dirty work.
Right.
And so players today also have the advantage of the fact that they can go to the basket and not worry about that. And that makes a huge difference because there are some players that I know today, if they got knocked to the floor a couple times in the lane, they would no longer go to the basket. That's a fact because that happens everywhere. And some of these players would not be the player that they are because teams would make a scouting report and say, hey, be physical with this dude. If before he takes off, bump him, hip check him, do whatever you need to do. He does not like being touched. I mean, we've all played with players like that. You play defense on them, you get next to them, you got your hand like in the small of their back just to see where they're going to go next. You're not holding them, you're not pushing on them, nothing like that. You're just touching them, and they start to frown.
And keep beating them to a spot.
They start to frown. They start moving around. First, you know, after that, they get a little frustrated. They start trying to knock your hand down, and then they can't shoot for the rest of the game.
Right.
And that's the part that mental part of the game is what I miss. Even on lower levels, you know, college, high school games, you can't really let them talk trash no more. We gotta tee that a lot of times because you know, we don't know where it's going. Whereas, you know, prior years, you wanted to talk trash because you know that certain players, they couldn't play when they were angry.
Right.
You know, and so these players definitely have an advantage of the things that we couldn't. Mizzo, I was just sharing with AC that players nowadays get to go to the hole with no consequence. Whereas and that makes a difference on who's good and who's bad because some of these players, if they got fouled hard once or twice or knocked to the floor, they wouldn't go to the basket again for the rest of the game. So we really don't know who has the heart and who doesn't. Because I know, and you know, there's no doubt that there were times where I used to get upset. I'm like, dude, as big as LeBron is, and I hate putting his name out there, but he's like the face of the league. And I'm like, dude, this dude is 6'8", 250, and he gets fouled a couple times, and then he's holding a press conference about the refs got to clean this up, and I'm like, man, those are slap fouls. I mean, like, you didn't get roughed up. What's the problem? Like, as opposed to Shaq getting butchered because of his size, you know, like, oh, he's 7'1", 355. He could take it. I mean, like, that 2004 championship, I'm watching Ben Wallace, who we know is undersized, and he's just laying on Shaq.
We can also
just laying on it.
We can also bring up 2001 when Shaq was elbowing the hell out of Mutombo too.
That's true too. That's true too. Which I was always the conspiracy theorist saying, hey, when it's your time, they let you get away with a little bit more than when it's not.
But if we're talking about 2001, where we had in that series the MVP, the defensive player of the year, a couple of all-team defense, all of that fun stuff. If we're talking about 2001, then we also have to talk about the great human pinball himself, Allen Iverson, and how he just torpedoed into people, bounced off of them, and then went to the line in the finals. Like, let's talk about it all. I know he's Philly, and he is the great Allen Iverson, but he was the human pinball. Whether he stepped over Tyronn Lue on the floor or not, he was the human pinball in that series. And so let's talk about it all.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it was hard for me to watch to see Shaq butt Mutombo's face up. You know, I mean that whole Lakers team, like Rod said, was basically given the title, and they were talented enough to take it. They were talented enough to take it themselves, but they didn't need any other help.
Is that what Rod said?
Help.
I'm about to kick Rod out of LA if that's what Rod said.
No,
You remember the face, right? He was busting Mutombo's lip.
Oh yeah, he definitely got away with stuff. But I've always been in the mindset that when they are marketing you, when you are one of the prominent players in the league, you get away with a little more than you would normally do. Like I remember as Iverson started to get older, they started hitting him with carrying violations.
Yep.
Where when he came in the league and they were trying to feature him like to play against Jordan, I mean, he basically picked the ball up and dribbled again. And they didn't have a whistle because he was new, he was exciting. And they like, oh, this Iverson against Jordan, we ain't calling Jack. We're gonna see how this turns out. And Iverson got one of his best shots of his career off on quote unquote the GOAT. So, you know, when Shaq started to decline a little bit, or when the game started to change and kind of phase the center position out, they started calling Shaq for those things, the offensive fouls and the 3-second violations, and it started to be clear to me that okay, Shaq is on his way out. When I start seeing stuff like that, I'm like, Shaq, that player is on their way out. And I'm sure that at some point they're going to start hitting Harden and some of these players with traveling violations and other stuff, and they're going to have a reasoning for it. Well, you know, this year we got an adjustment to the rule, blah, 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 whatever. And that stuff will start getting eliminated again at some point. But right now, Harden is what? In the prime of his career? He's like 30, was he 30 years old, 31? You know, he's in his prime. And he's one of the stars of the league. So they're not calling much of that at all. I mean, they consider that his signature move. Which to me is not a signature at all. Shoot, you know how many players would average 40 if they could hop 2 or 3 times before they take a shot?
Oh, you talking about Harden's
yeah. Yeah. And I'm starting to see players and see, I can remember Harden from high school. I've been watching Harden when he was at Artesia, Arizona State.
Drew League.
And the old Harden didn't play like that. And was just as effective as a scorer as he is now. He doesn't need that, and I think that's what bothers me the most. He doesn't need that. He could get his shot off when he wants to, without all the hopping and the extras and finding loopholes in the rules. A lot of these players don't need that. Some of them do, but most of them don't. And now it's becoming in vogue where these young players are watching it and they're just doing it for no reason. You know, LeBron takes a hop every time he takes a long jumper. players, younger kids are taking hops with no defenders out there, just hopping back just because it feels good. And it's a rhythm thing. You know, you got shooters, and then you got rhythm shooters who have to take a bounce or do something to make sure that the ball lines up in their hands. And that's one of the things that people do to make sure that they're lining the shot up right. That hop gives them a rhythm. It's like shooting a free throw, like bouncing the ball before a free throw. Most people don't just walk up to the line and just shoot the ball. They bounce it first. It gives them a rhythm before they take a shot. And it's the same with this hop.
It's disgusting to me.
But, yeah.
The whole thing.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I wanted to finish my point on the doc. What I'm seeing is how this has been an opportunity. You know what? I'm not even going to go that far. But what I'm seeing out of Michael Jordan is a lot. He's contrite about a lot of things. You know, him saying Scottie and Tex and Rodman, you know, were absolutely needed for him to become the legendary player that he was very important. But I'm also seeing how this documentary has been basically a parade for Michael Jordan. Like, it's not the criticism is needed. And the reason why I'm not a Michael Jordan guy, even though, you know, he is the basketball son of Julius Erving, in my opinion, you know, he sits on the fence. I have a huge problem with black men sitting on the fence because there's an opportunity there to expand our scope of intelligence. And Mike was that guy, and he showed in this last doc as to why he's sitting on the fence. Like, you can't talk about, you know, Zeke and them walking out without mentioning the Celtics doing the same thing. Like, I remember watching that Celtics walk off and being so pissed at John Sally for shaking their hand. Was it McHale's hand or somebody? I can't remember exactly who it was, but I was so mad. I could not believe. I was like, "Yo, dude, what are you doing?"
It was Isaiah with McHale.
It was Isaiah with McHale, but he also was congratulatory of Sally was congratulatory of them as well. You know, and he also did the same with the Bulls. You know, but you know, it was that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Like, you cannot not mention that point, because what that does is it exonerates the Celtics from the same type of vitriol that the Pistons got, and by extension what Zeke is getting right now.
Right.
He is being excoriated across social media for things that Zeke to me is Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson is a bitter man. He's a bitter man because he had to fight the power for the duration of his life, take them to Supreme Court and what have you. And he was not really given his just due. Even now, you know, like the 1961-62 season, he averaged a triple-double, but they still gave the MVP to Russell. You know, Elgin had his thing. You know, Walt Bellamy did his thing. And obviously Wilt did his thing with 50 and 25. You know, but Oscar was the guy who was so great. Now, people talk about him on that 1960 Olympic team with Jerry Russ, you know, being the precursor to the Dream Team and what he did in that regard, you know. But Zeke, to me, is that same guy. Zeke and his teams beat all of the greatness in their prime. All of them, you know. And he just wanted to be included in the party. We all know about him being left off the Olympic team and all kinds of, not the Olympic team, but the Dream Team, right? He was on the Dream Team?
The Dream Team. Yeah. Olympic team, same thing.
Yes, yeah. You know, that was an embarrassing mark. You know, especially the fact that Christian Laettner was put on there over Shaq. You know, and that moment became the origin of my sports writing career, because I remember Michael Wilbon justifying it. And back then you had to call in or letters to the editor, you know, and I remember just writing so many letters to these clowns that was justifying Christian Laettner being on there over Shaq. I think Shaq scored 50 points in his last game, I think it was, in the tournament. I may be wrong about that, but I know he did something in the tournament. But
and Isaiah went and torched John Stockton the next night after.
Of course, man. I mean, it's the politics becomes exhausting to speak about, and that is not really spoken about by these reporters and even fans by extension is a huge problem for me. You know, you have to mention the racial undertones of the Celtics not shaking the Pistons' hands. You have to do that. Because back then, what you have to remember is the Boston Celtics crowd was looked at as America. And that's the reason why Boston Celtics were the quote-unquote America's team. And they had always been going back to the days of Bill Russell. That's the reason why Will Chamberlain isn't seen as who he is for Tom. Because of these false narratives that continue to be expressed in the future, you know, and for Mike to do the same thing, man, I was disgusted, man. I was really disgusted, you know. You can't sit on the fence when you the arguable GOAT. You can't do it. And it's the same way that I criticize LeBron for his Tamir Rice and the other two murders there where the cop shot up the car 137 times. You know, his stance on that, I have to be critical of him. And also the Gisele Bundchen cover, the ape cover, you know, where he didn't go out as far as he needed to. I had to think the same thing about Michael Jordan. Like, you have to go out as far. I don't give a damn about the money, okay? I don't give a damn about your status. You have to be a man in a truth there. You have to extend your truth because it allows these kids, like your son sitting there listening to us, allows them to have better information about themselves, because we seem to have a disinformation about ourselves and are also confident in that disinformation. You know, so Mike passing that along in that doc, man, was a really bad memory brought back up. It opened up a wound as to why I'm not a Michael Jordan guy. I need my sports heroes to be well-rounded. And it's the reason why, you know, I spent so much time on, you know, the Lilliputians like Steph Curry through time for me. Like, they don't have like this total base of self when it comes to inside and outside the game. Like, when I see a guy that's inside and outside the game, they get a bigger appreciation from me because they're challenging themselves to be bigger and also pass something down to the kids. I need that. I need that because my father was a Marine. He drilled into my head. My father had this drill that he would do for me every morning where he would, place some bird seed on a windowsill in his bedroom. And I would have to remember the birds that ate the seed in order when they left. It's what gave me the memory that I use today in sports. So when this revisionist history happens in sports, I am furious. I'm furious because I know what actually happened based on that memory that my father used. I would ask any of you to tell your young children to do this. As they are developing their memories, try to get them to remember the memory before the memory. Okay, so when that happens, it builds your actual memory. Because it's not just based on a singular memory. It's built on the before, what happened before what you remember that was so paramount that is stuck in your memory.
Right.
You know, remember as far as they can before that big memory. But so I mean, when all these things happen, I see how Isaiah, was basically they were critical of him up until now. And then obviously, the New York things happen, and the sexual harassment stuff. Whatever. That actually should be, also part of his story. But even before then, he was looked at as a hatred, and I was wondering why he was looked at that way, because he had a smile on his face, and the Magic stuff notwithstanding, but I'm talking about how he spoke about in true base what happened in the NBA. It is a truth that Larry Bird would not be looked at who he is if he wasn't white.
Right. Agreed.
I'm sorry. He won 3 MVPs. He won 3 MVPs in a row with Magic and Charles Barkley and all kinds of other things.
I think that's been the case since he was in the league. I think that's the case for the whole time. And that's something I knew as a kid, which is interesting because I guess my father instilled that in me, or maybe I was just a very objective kid and I wasn't naive and I could tell. And I'm going to tell you, one of the things that makes me uncomfortable, and this is just me, but when we look at Mike talk in the doc, every time he mentions Erving, he mentions Larry first. He says, I could finally be recognized with the greats, with Larry and Magic. He never says Magic's name first. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that, and maybe it doesn't affect you like it affects me, but he always says Larry and Magic.
But it's because of what has been passed through time that the league was changed forever with Larry and Magic. You got to understand that most of these writers are white. Most of them say that Larry Bird is their favorite player all time. They're unapologetic in saying this.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's true. And what's funny is I've always said that I respect Magic more than other people because he was the one to beat an actual great white hope. Other players can't say that. But you don't get – there is such thing as a great white hope. I'm going to just throw that out there. Because they've been looking for it since Larry Bird retired. You remember Keith Van Horn? They thought he would be the next one. And then there were some players after him who they said, you know what? And European players don't count because Americans want an American-born player. There's a difference. I'm gonna put that out there. So even though they love Steve Nash, he's Canadian. And if Steve Nash was from French Lick or from Sandy Springs or one of these towns, you best believe he would be on a much higher plateau than just winning 2 MVPs. And I've always said, if MJ had to battle a healthy Larry when both of them were in their primes, MJ would have less finals appearances, less final trophies, and he would have taken a back seat like Magic had to on a couple times. Because best believe Magic was going to share some of that stuff. You wasn't going to go through a whole decade and not give Bird anything.
Kareem, yeah, no way. No,
you weren't going to deny Bird getting anything. So Magic was going to have to share. But I tip my hat because Magic won more than he lost. Mm-hmm. And people can paint it any kind of way they want to, but he won more than he lost. And had Bird not been in the equation, I think Magic would have more than he has.
No doubt.
But I've always been of the because he went to the championship 9 times out of 11 or 12 years. I mean, they don't speak of it when it comes to Magic. They talk about it all day with LeBron. But Magic the 2 times he didn't go, his own miracle shots with one with Ralph Sampson and another one. Both times were against Houston, not against the Celtics. I mean, he kicked it up a notch when he knew that, because people may not want to accept it, but race was a huge driving force when those two came into the league. I mean, the nation was honestly divided. You had the white side for Bird, and I'm not saying that there weren't black fans who didn't support Larry Bird, because one of my best friends has been a Boston Celtic fan his whole life, and since we were little. And
I'll pray for him.
I have. And then you had the majority black fans who all followed Magic. And if they were and if they weren't Magic fans, they were in the championship when the Lakers played the Celtics. Just for that reason. Just
unless your name is Mike Tillery, you just turn the TV off.
but
no, he went for Kareem. He went for Kareem.
But you guys understand what I'm saying. You know, they were racial. I mean, there are racial lines drawn now for less than that nowadays. So you can imagine how it was when I guess I really didn't follow the newspapers and stuff at that time like I probably should have when Magic was meeting Bird in college for the championship. But I'm sure if the news media outlets were bigger at that time, we would have seen a lot more racial disparities building up to that game until Michigan State beat them.
Yeah.
The same way we did when it was leading up to the Lakers playing the Celtics in the finals.
Yeah.
You know, you heard all kind of crazy stories about when LA would travel to Boston for the finals, the kind of things that people would do to them on the road, you know, the night before the game, turning on the fire alarms in the hotels, you know, things happen to their team bus, you know, where it was flooding their rooms, where they gotta, you know, stand out in the hallway or in the lobby of the hotel for hours to wait and get checked in, can't get any sleep, and they're winning in spite of that. And so that's the one thing I always say when it comes to Magic, why he's my all-time favorite, that the other players don't have, that he can boast about. And I think this is probably the first time I've actually said it publicly. But yeah,
it's very public
he is the only one. He's the one to be the Great White Hope. And Magic, I mean, and Michael can't say it. As much as I love Kobe, right? As much as I love Kobe, he can't say it. None of them.
Doc can say it.
Well, not in the finals.
Oh yeah, in the final, but they had to face the Celtics or the Bucks to get there.
So
yeah,
thank you for that, Rod. Straight up, and you made me think. I just shout out to Doug Williams because he got John Elway in the NFL, and I definitely feel like that this fits that category. But I know we're talking NBA. I just thought about Doug Williams. We're gonna go ahead and go to the closeout. But one thing that Mike and I were wondering. Rod, back in the day, when you guys were like at the arena, the Coliseum and all that, and you guys were watching the gladiators fight, was it the same thing? Was there a racial bias back then? And when they were reporting on stone tablets and all that, was, you know, were there racial undertones, and or was it just all just, you know, to the victor goes the spoils?
I mean, you know, since you stole a girlfriend of one of those Roman soldiers, you could probably tell me better than I can tell you.
All right. So this is the part of the show, everybody, where we call the closeout, and it's everybody gives their closing thoughts. Trey had to go to the doctor, so that leaves us with Baby Hair 562 and Hardcore Peace. Rod, you're first up for the closeout.
Make this brief, man. Just opened my eyes to a lot when I saw that last dance, episode 3 and 4. I hope, man, because I listened to Isaiah's interview on First Take, and he was saying something that I've seen to be true. People are giving Isaiah flack for whatever reason, basically dismissing him and saying he's this or that. But the point he made was that as hard as the players went at each other on the floor, off the floor, they were cool. And he says it's a shame because Michael Jordan came out in the interview saying, "Oh, I still hate the Pistons." And the way he put it out there, just his tone and his delivery, he said it as if he still hates the team and the players. And Isaiah was saying, if he actually really hates us after 30, 40 years, something is wrong with that. Because we left that stuff behind when the game was over, and I really hope that that's not the case, because when we get to that level, are in a prestigious position to use our power to influence in a multitude of ways. And I was glad that Bill Russell pulled Shaq and Kobe to the side and helped them bury that, as well as some others that Bill Russell has been very instrumental in using his influence to make sure that players of color have tried to do the right thing and buried some of this bitterness and some of this crazy stuff that they've had going on. But I definitely hope that gets buried. And maybe even they do that show where the two talk face to face. I can't remember the name of the show, but I know Kobe and Shaq had one, and Magic Isaiah united on one. And it would probably be good to see if Jordan and Isaiah do one. This should be time in their 60s that they can look back and actually, embrace the battles. They brought the best out of each other. That should be celebrated. It shouldn't be hatred in that. Not at this point. They got kids, they got grandkids. It's too much for that. We have to stop all of that. I just saw that they're talking about trying to get the Lakers practice facilities open, and they're talking about opening up things. As much as I'm dying for sports, I'm just trying to wait and see how that's going to play out. But definitely can't wait to see this next episode of the show. And definitely had some fun today on this one with Steph Curry and LeBron and defense and no defense. So I'll be ready for the next one.
Yes, sir. Mizzo, thanks.
Yeah, so the whole thing with Zeke is a big issue for me, and it just goes to show that we are just standing up for ourselves throughout time, is looked at in a bad way. And those that stroke the fence, and sit on the fence, no matter how many barbs they get from sitting on the fence, rather stay on the fence than actually have an opinion about something that's going to help their people. And I have a huge problem with those type of guys. I think that Mike ushered in an entire era of athletes that don't say anything, because they know that if they don't say anything, that corporately they're going to get paid for it.
They
You know,
definitely do. Yeah.
and that's what happened. You know, and this happened for what Mike left in 2000. You know, so that whole decade, athletes very rarely said anything, like anything. You have very few of them say anything. You know, but my closeout is this. You know, and you guys know it's been a very stressful time for me with the birth of my grandbaby, Nevaeh Amore Tillery. You know, she's my second grandbaby, you know, following Lila Noel Tillery. You know, I'm a proud pop. You know, I just put on Facebook that I'm a pop Facebook to death for a while. And, you know, y'all just got to deal with me. You know, but Nevaeh had some slight issues in the birth with jaundice, and you know the interaction of the antigens in her blood, and it was really scary. They thought that they would have to have a blood transfusion. That's the reason I wasn't on the live with y'all for the preview, but she did not have that. And the doctors in another hospital an hour away, which my son had to follow. Can you imagine following an ambulance with your newborn in it? An hour away, and all of the thoughts that you're having on that hour drive, you know, and then getting to the hospital and then wondering, you know, my son is a great kid. Like I talked about before, you know, I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of how even keeled he was throughout this to really take care of his family and ensure that his family stays intact, because these are the moments that break marriages up, you know, because there's too much emotion that's thrown to it, and people just can't step up to be who they are, to make sure that the union remains intact. To be honest with you, it happened to me with my firstborn. He was 1 pound 14 ounces, and he was in the hospital for 4 months, and his mother and I split up. You know, it was too hard. It really was. But you know, my son is not following in my footsteps and being greater, and yes, and doing something that I'm very proud of him for doing. And you know, I wish him the best in his quest to become the best father ever, because he's already on his way. You know, whether it's physically or mentally, you know, he's doing some great things early on, and it's almost giving me a chance to reflect on my fatherhood, and now, you know, seeing the second generation of myself born, it's a different feeling. You know, it's so different, and you know, it's so great. You know, it gives you a chance to look back, but also fall into the shadows. It also gives you a chance to stand up and and also fall back in the shadows, because you're seeing your children do what you did 20 or so years ago. You know, so I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of all my kids. You know, shout out to Mike, my oldest, and my youngest, Taylor. You know, I love y'all. You know, thank you for being such great children, and you know, give me a great chance to stick out my chest and brag about you and be proud about you as you mature and develop, you know, before your 30s. You know, I love y'all. And, you know, even in this COVID era, you know, you are doing what you need to do to ascend to greatness. And I'm very proud of you. But I love you, Nevaeh Amore Tillery. You know, I'm glad that you're here. I can't wait to hold you and love on you. Hope you get all the stuff that I've sent, you know, and one day appreciate them, you know, and baby Lila, with that big personality that you had. Pop can't wait to see you. I'm sure I'll be FaceTiming you, you know, in the next couple of days and telling you how much I love you. But I love you, Gaston and Sarah Beth, for having two great grandchildren that I'm adoring, and it's giving me a shift in my life that I think is needed, because it's taking the pettiness away from our current existence and making me see what life truly is through the love of two great new souls.
Wow. Yeah. Shout out to you for another grandchild, and you're definitely in our prayers. Your family are in our prayers. Hopefully everything continues to go in the right way as far as the baby's health is concerned. And thank you for that closeout. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, YouTube viewership. Thank you, Spotify and Anchor listenership on all the DSPs. Episode 6, the Collective Podcast. We appreciate you. 6 weeks into this, we're loving the opportunity to share our thoughts. We're loving the opportunity to have these conversations amongst friends in front of all of you. We're loving the fact that we are pushed to debate one another and call people to the carpet, sometimes call each other to the carpet, to change the narrative in many aspects of sports and sports coverage. Change the narrative as coined by Mizzo himself. My closeout, we've seen Zaire, Rod's son, throughout much of this podcast, and then we saw the picture of Mike's grandbabies. My stepdaughter, what's up, Money Grip? My stepdaughter Braylon is being homeschooled right now, and boy, is she a trooper to fight through all of this and do all that she can to continue to learn and continue to excel in school. And so my hat is off to her and all of the kids that have to go through this, but my hat is specifically off to her. It's we live right across the street from the school, and she can't leave the house, and she is hardworking every day to try to make sure that she does excel. I don't even know if this stuff counts right now. We've received mixed messages from the school district, but she's still pressing forward, and I appreciate that. I love her. I want her to know that. Obviously, my baby girl Kayla, I love her. She's amazing. She's talking more and more every day. I can't wait for her to start sports. I believe that just the way that she dives onto things and dives off of things and tumbles and just does so many things. I believe that she is going to be a phenomenal athlete, and I can't wait for her to play soccer and softball at UCLA and do so many other great things. But boy, I'll just say this: I'm happy to finally have joined you guys in the world of fatherhood. It is truly amazing. Yeah, and I don't get to this point without my loving fiance Brianna, and so I want to thank her also for giving me this opportunity, giving me these opportunities, and that's today's closeout. So thank you all for tuning in, whether you're looking at us or listening to us or both. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next Tuesday, episode 7. We out.
Yep. Hang in there, brother.
You too, man. Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. Catch you on the next one.